Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on another edition of The Big Picture. Um, Thank you all for, if you joined us last night for Betty Kearse and her presentation. It was fabulous. And if you did register but you didn't get to finish, you can always go back. You'll get a link. And also there's something new because we got a grant from Maryland Humanities to support Common Ground for the next fiscal year. And so we will be doing surveys and more reporting, which we need to do anyway. So if you see those at any time after a program, please fill that out. It would really help me out, help when it's time for the grant reporting. So hi Dee, welcome everyone. We're about to get a little weather here in my part of the world. That tropical storm is kind of coming through, so we're getting the residuals of that today. So I hope that my signal lasts. And also in August, we're also having Common Ground programming, August 18th and 19th, and then there is a live presentation, plus people are invited to come for Monday, August 23rd, which is the UNESCO commemoration of the Middle Passage. And so we do that annually. Sometimes the events are bigger than other years, but we commemorate it every year. So that's what's going to go on. So I'll be doing a live for that. Plus, you're welcome to come on site if you're around August 23rd. The other events in August will be virtual, and both Speaker Series and Common Ground, and sometimes they're connected. Hello, everybody. And sometimes they're connected, the subject matter. So please join us anytime there's something out there. We get it out there to market as soon as we possibly can. Hi, Meredith. Good to see you virtually. Yes, we're getting some weather here, Jerome. So hopefully, I had my son take the umbrella off the patio, so hopefully it won't be too bad. So today's topic, and some of you will already know this information. I know, Meredith, I shared a lot of this with you already. But people ask all the time, is Sotterley connected to the GU 272, Georgetown University's 272? Of these, a sale that went on to support the college, to keep it afloat. People from St. Mary's County were taken and sold down the river, down south to Louisiana. So I'm going to cover how is Sotterley connected to all that, because I get asked that a lot. And the title today is Less Than 6 Degrees, because you don't have to go 6 degrees away to figure out how Sotterley is connected somehow. So this is what we do know. And Catherine, thank goodness for Catherine. Hi Beth. She is going to be giving you links today. I put down all my links so you can go back and see for yourself some of the original documents. I did the searches, so it should make you able to go right there today. And she'll put those up as I talk about them. Hi, Michelle. So here we go. So you may already know, but John Rousby Plater and John Rousby Plater Jr. Remember, John Rousby Plater was the administrator of Sotterley for his underage nephew George Plater the fifth, right? And in 1823, John Rousby Plater, John Rousby Plater Jr., and George Plater, I mean the fourth, I mean, no, the fifth, that's right, the fifth, the last George Plater to live here. So John Rousby Plater, it's hard to keep track, John Rousby Plater Jr., and George Plater the fifth, we know, we have documentation that they were they were part of the domestic slave trade at the time. So we know that there's a shipment that went from Baltimore with all these people's names on it, these three platers, right, to Louisiana in 1823. So we know there's a history of this going on at Sotterley before the Georgetown sale, the Georgetown debacle there. So, we have a history of it already, right? Hi, Terry. Hi, Jerry. Terry and Jerry. Delma, good to see you. Welcome. So we have a history of that already. So that's one thing, and you can find that document. It's in, there's a if you plug in John Rousby Plater into, and George Plater the fifth into the that database that shows the Louisiana shipments of enslaved from Maryland to Louisiana, you will find it plain as day with their names on it. Can't deny it. Okay. So, the first link I'm sharing, and thank you, Catherine, for sharing, is just, how do you know if you are, and some of you already know you are part of the 272. You're welcome to identify here if you want to, let people know. I know that some of you are. There's a lot of Sotterley descendants that, are descended from people at Sotterley, but their ancestors weren't necessarily held at Sotterley. So they always look for who actually held them in bondage at the time. So a lot of connections, a lot of people related. Hi, Dee. Hi, Jerry. Hi, Donna. So a lot of people are related, right? It's all connected. But if you didn't know the list, you can go to the link that Catherine's going to give you right now. How do you know if you are descended from the 272? And there's a little cheat sheet that gives you what you should look for, what you should what you should if you heard it in your oral history, if you have ancestors that came from certain places, it lists all that. And plus, they're not too picky about your documentation. That's what they help you with. So if you think, go ahead and there's a whole other like nonprofit that's connected with Georgetown that looks all that stuff up. Hi, Vicki. Hi, Dorinda. So don't be afraid to look at it, and and even if you think you might have a clue, and you heard something or your family came from that area, go ahead and do a query. They're very nice people. They won't, they're just trying to do research. They do respect your story, and they're not going to hijack it or anything. So, their mission is really one thing, is to uncover descendants so that there can be some kind of reparation done, and knowing Georgetown history. So that's really their whole purpose for doing that. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Darlene. So that is the first thing I would look at if you're curious, and if you did not know. So people that are Sotterley descendants were connected to the sale itself, and both buying and selling. So we're going to talk about these people. So Governor Johnson of Louisiana, he was the governor of Louisiana at the time, and he was one of the major purchasers of and benefactors of this particular sale. He was a buyer, and Governor Johnson, guess who he's married to? He's married to a Plater granddaughter, Anne Rousby Key. Okay? The daughter of Anne Plater. So she was the granddaughter of George Plater III and Elizabeth, right? Less than 6 degrees, I told you. And hi, Mary. Hi, Mary Ellen. So that's pretty close, right? That's 2 generations away from the Platers, right? And so anything you see Governor Johnson's name on, remember that he is married to Anne Rousby Key, right? A granddaughter of Sotterley people, right? Her brother, okay? So I'm not done, okay? Anne Rousby Key's, the governor's wife, brother, Anne's brother, was Philip Barton Key Jr., okay? And he facilitated sales to Louisiana. And Catherine is going to give you, I already did the query, so this link should take you to the documents where Philip Barton Key Jr.'s name is on it. Okay, so he facilitated many sales to Louisiana, and he was in all this up to his eyeballs, right? So the governor of Johnson of Louisiana would be Philip's brother-in-law, right? Yes. So so that is something you want to look at. So that's less than 6 degrees, folks. And all of these people that are being taken and sold out of the Jesuits, were slaveholders, and this is a way that they want to make some cash for the college, right? Slavery is kind of starting the idea. Then there's mixed. There is mixed feelings. Some Jesuits and Catholics didn't like that the sale went on, and some, especially people that were in charge at the college, thought this was a good idea. It was a way to save Georgetown, and of course the money won out, which is also, it happens so many times when we talk about slavery. It's all about the money, always. And that's what it was. So, so Philip Barton Key Jr., Sotterley played her grandkid, right? Brother-in-law to Governor Johnson, and I on this document, this link, it shows all the documents with Philip's name all over it. Okay. Hi Heidi. So after Governor Johnson died, his widow returned to St. Mary's County and lived there for the rest of her life, and she lived down towards St. Mary's City, down that way. But after she was widowed, she came and lived the rest of her life back in St. Mary's County. And then we have Anne Forrest Green. So I've done programs about Anne Forrest Green. She's also a Plater granddaughter. And so she was the daughter of Rebecca Plater Forrest, who lived in Georgetown. So they're Georgetown people. Evidently, Anne Forrest Green practiced Catholicism. She rented out one of her enslaved young men to Georgetown College. And I did put, his name was Aaron Edmondson. And I did put that link there for you to see and read all about Aaron. He ended up leaving eventually with the Union Army, right? So he left. He left the scene, right? He took his freedom and went with the Union Army eventually. Remember, when Georgetown and D.C. Maryland is a border state, so you've got a lot of Southern sympathizers, Confederates living in Georgetown and surrounding area on this side of Virginia that have family across there, like Anne Forrest Green did. Her daughter was in on the John Wilkes Booth conspiracy. She writes letters. She kept a diary for about 2 or 3 years, and I've talked about it before, but she's worried about what's going on. She talks about the feeling occupied. She did go to the White House before and met Lincoln in person, describes him in her diary. And but definitely Southern sympathizers, to say the least. And Anne Forrest was one of many women who were slaveholders. She was a widow by that time, so she is counting her pennies. Remember, if you're a widow back in the day, if you live a long time, which Anne did, you can start going broke really fast, right? And so renting out Aaron and other people that she held in slavery was a way for her to make income, right? And so Aaron was held by Anne Forrest Green. And also another link that I found that was really interesting is Anne Forrest Green's claim. So like many slaveholders, when their enslaved people ran off, just like Walter Hanson Stone Briscoe did, he tried to claim losses of his property, right? Anne Forrest Green was no different. So there is now a you can find Anne Forrest Green's claim. So in her claim, she wanted $500 for Aaron. But she ended up getting, this is what she got. She did get something. She ended up getting $40 for the labor that Georgetown, owed her. She didn't get 500, but that claim document lists a lot of other people that she held. So that might be interesting for you to look at, see if you have any connections to any of these people. And it's just fascinating to read the primary sources. It really is, and see those names, and you can't, it's undeniable. So that is, and there's also a man, named Duff Green, and I think it's Anne Forrest Green's brother. If you see his name, Duff Green, but I have to check that out. I didn't have time to check out, okay, which one's Duff. I know that's not probably his real first name. So I have to refresh my memory. So I didn't have time to do that, but I'm sure it's a relative. It's either, because of the dates and things, I think it's her brother. But I'm not positive about that until I go look it up again. So you have a lot of resources to look through. And what does that mean for Sotterley? Well, we have a lot of descendants of Sotterley that are connected to other people too. It's when they're here in St. Mary's County, they have relatives all over the place, all over the area, all over southern Maryland. And so you might not be one of the 272, but you're related to somebody that is. So it's a part of history that is pretty ugly, but it's a good illustration of the realness of this institution, and the myths that DC was not DC was surrounded by Confederate sympathizers, and Maryland was full of slaveholders, and large and small. So and this was a practice, as we see, that was going on before all this at Sotterley. This was a practice of being involved in the domestic slave trade way before this. There's another owner that comes up on here. His name is James Briscoe, and his wife Anne from Baltimore. They sold slaves to Louisiana, but I checked it out, and the date doesn't work to be Walter Hanson Stone Briscoe's son, James. James would have been too young when this happened, but I'm sure it's some kind of relative of Dr. Briscoe's, but I haven't had a chance to confirm that yet. And there's also a slaveholder in this scenario named Thompson, so I'm not quite sure that's not connected. So anything you have, or anything if you're willing to share with your fellow descendants, or Sotterley and Georgetown, it's good for everybody to know these connections. It really helps tell the story. So about Dr. Briscoe. So Dr. Briscoe, Walter Hanson Stone Briscoe, and Emmeline were the owners of 400 acres that was Sotterley at that time. And they owned Sotterley at this time period. They married in 1826, right? But they also were involved in the domestic slave trade. Not necessarily the Georgetown sale, but they were in the domestic slave trade. And do we know, there's a lot of research to be done. Some people that were slated to go to Louisiana during the sale in Georgetown you know, escaped. I mean, they left and hid, you know, to get away from this. So we don't know, are there people that hid at Sotterley? Maybe we don't know that. So so that's ongoing research too. It was happening all around Sotterley. We do have, Sotterley has Briscoe letters, okay, and it's Dr. Briscoe, and he's writing to a woman in Mississippi, and he wrote to this woman, and also she came and visited Dr. Briscoe here at Sotterley. It wasn't the first time, so they had, you know, something going, right? This woman from Mississippi, and so I've when I first saw that, I said, "Oh, I've got to read that because I bet they're trading slaves. I bet they're doing some slave dealing here, because that only makes sense." So I suspect their relationship might include slave selling, right? But nothing in the letter comes right out and says this. It's just my hypothesis. It makes sense. Was she here to make a purchase? Is this someone that in Mississippi that you know, they had a business relationship? And before you say, "Oh no, Dr. Briscoe didn't do any of that," well, in the 1860 tax assessment of Dr. Briscoe, he has a list. You know, you look for money, right? Follow the money, and you can find the stories a lot of times. So by even in 1860, in the tax assessment, he listed several children and young adults, and he listed it, and it was, "My property either dead or sold." So this is property he no longer had, people he no longer enslaved, because they either died, right, or they were sold off. So he does list a 16-year-old named Martha, who was sold to a trader. It's in his own words, okay? It's in his own words. And so yes, he did take part. Yes, there were people that took their own freedom from Dr. Briscoe too. You have to search really hard, because Dr. Briscoe, he was, of course, he and his sons were Confederates, right? Three of his sons went to the Confederacy. So during the Civil War, Dr. Briscoe is conspicuously absent from the press. You don't hear about him. He's not really making a big deal about his goings on. There's a reason for that, right? He's a pillar of the community of the Episcopal Church, but man, he is off the radar a lot of times during the Civil War, and there's a reason. You know, the Union Army is watching him. They're looking for people going across the Potomac into Virginia. One of his sons was stopped and questioned by the Union Army, so for aiding and abetting. So that's a good question, Trudy. I think they're of course related to the same ancestor, right? That key name. So whether, I can't remember whether if it's the right generation. Trudy asked, "How is Henry G.S. Key related to Philip Barton Key?" I'll have to look it up. And I'm not sure. I think it's a later generation, but he has to have that same key ancestor, right? The Rebecca, Philip Barton Key and Anne, right? So they're in the same family. I'll look it up for you later, okay? So I'll look that answer up for you. Um, so I have it, I just don't remember it right now. But it has to come from the same family. Um, and so that's really the tax assessment. Sotterley, even though as of yet I don't have any person that came directly from Sotterley listed as being held at Sotterley here, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just haven't found it yet. But I think Sotterley is pretty close. Like 2 generations, and that family down in it has some really good maps on the Georgetown site too. It tells you where in Louisiana all these plantations were, and of course the Keys at one time owned Acadia plantation in Troubadour, right? And in Louisiana. So it's definitely connected to Sotterley descendants big time. And some Sotterley descendants of the Platers still live in Louisiana. So what a web we weave, right? So hey Angela, welcome. That's okay. You can go back and do the recording. It should be okay today and not have gaps in it. So I'll be posting it right after this, so you can go back and look at it. But that's really all I have. If anybody else would like to share anything else with each other or with Sotterley, you find anything cool that really is part of Sotterley's story, connected heavily. Or if you just want to share your finds, that's great. education@sotterley.org, that's where I am. So you're always welcome to email me at any time. So once again, let's see. So it's a little shorter today, but I don't want to talk on and on if I don't have anything else to say. I'll look back and look at all if there's any questions, and I'll try to answer those when I'm finished. Getting ready for a little rain. I had my son take the umbrella off the patio table because we're under a tornado watch and all that junk today. So it's Maryland. What can I tell you? Wait 5 minutes and it will change. So hopefully there's no damage, and we won't have terrible flooding or anything like that. That's always a concern when we get a lot of heavy rain really fast. Thank you for joining me. I can't tell you how encouraging it is to see all of your names pop up, and this you are why I work here at Sotterley, right? You are why. That is it's one of my joys. Sometimes it can get sad, but it is really I feel privileged to work with you all. So thank you. Be safe wherever you are, and God bless. Okay, see you next week, Thursday at 2:00. Bye bye.